Susan Blackmore is a visiting professor at the University of Plymouth. She is a distinguished writer within the area of consciousness, and she is the author of Conversations on Consciousness.
Does the brain produce the mind, and if so, how, and what evidence is there for this, Sue?
Sure, that's three questions in one, isn't it? The first question, does it produce the mind? No. A second one, well, since the first one's no, I don't have to answer it. I'll leave the third one for now. I would say the brain doesn't produce the mind, because that just gets you straight into dualism. And dualism can't work for so many reasons. Not least because if there really were two totally separate kinds of things, they couldn't communicate with each other. So we wouldn't be able to explain things like why drugs that affect the brain change our state of consciousness or anything like that. So if you say the brain produces the mind, you've got a problem. Of course, many scientists do say that. And the whole of the hard problem arises for that. Dave Chalmers, in his original formulation of the hard problem, said this is the question of how an objective brain gives rise to subjective experiences. Well, gives rise to is similar to produce, and you've got the same problem. Now, Dave Chalmers is a kind of dualist, but he's pretty rare there. And I think the real problem is that so many scientists really think about consciousness as something that is produced by the brain, and don't realize what a nightmare that leads you into.
You've gone an extra level beyond this material, because you're basically saying the two are exactly the same, and even kind of separating them, this dichotomy that the brain produces the mind, is already a problem. So on the one hand, that's a good reason to completely reject any form of dualism and the hard problem that follows from that, because it's not even valid. So I'm assuming this would go into the realm of someone like Daniel Dennett, who rejects the Cartesian theatre. There is no mind, no specialness going on there. You literally are your brain. Okay, that's a valid view. Many people hold that. We can do away, from your perspective, with the problem of the hard problem and this duality. How does this then lead us with the problem of qualia?
You've leapt way ahead of where I went. Let me go back a step. So I would say that the hard problem, as it is normally stated, implies a kind of dualism that I can't accept. I think it's rubbish, and that's going to lead you into trouble. That doesn't mean I know where we go from there. I mean, you've taken it into something like identity theory, that the brain just is the mind, or that really we're talking about consciousness, though, not, I mean, the mind I think encompasses an awful lot more. We're talking about subjective experience. I cannot see how the firing of neurons in the brain can be my experience of, well, I'm looking at a kind of bluish screen at the moment. You know, it's a really wonderful blue, and it kind of fades darker in the middle and paler at the outside. You know, this is my ineffable private personal experience. Call it a quale if you like, although in brackets there are problems with that too. But here is this extraordinary experience. It seems to be me experiencing this blue color on this screen. How can that be the firing of neurons? Maybe it is. I had a wonderful conversation with both the Churchlands, Pat and Paul, some years ago. It's in my book, Conversations on Consciousness. Yeah. And Pat said, you know, centuries ago, people would have just not understood if you said that light just is electromagnetic radiation, because it wouldn't make any sense. They wouldn't be able to get their heads around it at all. Well, maybe in 10 years or 20 years or something, people will say the same about consciousness and the firing of neurons. It will be obvious to them why they're the same thing, but it isn't obvious to me now. So I don't leap straight from saying the hard problem is misconceived into identity theory. I'm left floundering in the mystery.
Okay, that's reasonable, but you're still making the assumption, because on the one hand, if you're saying that you don't know why the brain produces a whole host of conscious experience on the one hand, yet you're clearly rejecting dualism on the other, isn't that counting your chickens before you've gotten there, so to speak?
Well, it might be, but actually what I am tending to do at the moment, And after all, I've been struggling with this one way or another for a long time. What I'm tending to do at the moment is to take an idea that comes more directly out of my own anomalous, strange experiences, my decades long of Zen meditation, as well as science and philosophy. And it's something like this. Whenever we ask ourselves, am I conscious now? The answer always is yes. Somehow just asking that brings up a self who's having an experience, and I say that I'm conscious now of this blue screen in front of me. But hang on a minute. A moment before that, was I conscious of, I was still, staring ahead of me at this blue screen. But actually it felt like I became conscious when I asked myself that question. So what was happening before? I don't know. Now, I suspect that something like this is going on. Whenever we ask ourselves about qualia, about who am I, about the nature of consciousness or whatever, that questioning itself changes the state we're in and causes the brain to produce a self, an experience, and so on, and us to call it as an attribution, that's what I'm conscious of now. But most of the time, when we're walking around in our ordinary life, getting on with stuff, there's multiple parallel things going on in our head, loads and loads of them. We can see them in scanners, lots and lots of different things going on. And if you ask which one was I conscious of at any particular time, there isn't any answer. As long as I wasn't asking myself what I'm conscious of, there's no answer. As Dennett would put it, in a slightly different theory than mine, but it's related, he would say there is no fact of the matter. And I think he's absolutely spot on there. 99%, unless you are really practicing mindfulness all the time, or in some way going around asking yourself, am I conscious now? Who am I? Blah, blah, blah. Unless you're doing that, there are multiple parallel things going on, and there is no sense in which you are conscious of one and not the others.
Sure, no, that's a very interesting point. So essentially, just to summarise aspects of that, most of the time we walk around on autopilot, just problem-solving beings that aren't necessarily aware that we are, on the other hand, experiencing this conscious experience until we actually ask, oh, why am I conscious? Why am I doing this? And then that comes into play. How does this pan out in the, for example, the dream state, in which you can be conscious in a dream and still experience yourself in a dream, but it's not your conscious self, if that makes any sense?
You're leaping ahead of me again here, because you're saying it's on autopilot, and I'm not really saying that. I mean, the idea of autopilot is, I think in ordinary parlance, is something like, I'm conscious some of the time and then I go off into autopilot. I'm saying that you're conscious none of the time. It's just an after the fact attribution. And well, at those moments when you're asking it, am I conscious now? Then you're making a decision. I'm going to say I'm conscious of this. But most of the time, it's always after the fact attributions. Think, well, I did this, I chose that, I decided to do that, I picked up this, I drank that coffee, I must have been conscious of it. And I'm saying, no, it isn't like that. Consciousness is not something like that. Consciousness is not something like, oh, there are some conscious processes and some not. There are sometimes I'm conscious and sometimes I'm not. It's an attribution that we make. And we make a false attribution, if you like, because we think it's something that arises from or emerges from or is produced by the brain. And actually, it's just a name we give to certain processes and not others. Perhaps when there are brain processes involving a self that are constructed in a certain way. I mean, I don't know. We could find the neural correlates of what it is that makes those attributions. But in my opinion, we will never find the neural correlates of consciousness itself, because there isn't any such thing. So now I can come to your question about dreaming. So our normal, ordinary dreams, then during the dream, as you would expect, there's just stuff happening, loads and loads of weird stuff happening. And then we wake up and we go, oh, I remember that. Oh, I've been dreaming. And, construct some plausible kind of story out of all the stuff that was going on. And we know a lot about dreaming. We know it happens roughly in real time, and there are things going on. We can look at dreaming brains and see them going on. But again, I would say there is no sense in which any of those things going on are conscious and some are not conscious, because that doesn't mean anything, in my opinion. So now you come to a lucid dream, in which during the dream that it's a dream. Well, that, to my mind, is very much like the special times I was talking about, when you kind of ask yourself, what am I conscious of? That's the weird thing in a lucid dream. They're wonderful dreams. I rarely have them, but I love them when I do have them. And you go, oh, hang on a minute. is this a dream? Wow. And then you're in that moment thinking, gosh, and then after a moment or two, typically for most people, you wander off and forget it all again, and you're off back into ordinary dreaming.
So it's not exactly autopilot at all, as you cleared up there. It's just experiencing pure consciousness per se, whether you're awake or dreaming, and it's not till you step back and have a moment, oh, I'm conscious here, that comes into play.
Yes. But the real crux of what I'm saying, and this is exactly now very, very similar to what Dennett is saying, is if we think there are some processes that are conscious and some that are not of the things going on in the brain, we're wrong. We're deluded. That's the way we think about consciousness. That's how most scientists think about consciousness, that some of our brain processes are conscious and some aren't, that somehow this consciousness that attaches itself or whatever to some neurons and not others, and then consciousness emerges. All that is wrong. We should not think about consciousness that way at all. It isn't that kind of thing. If you do think about it that way, you get right into the explanatory gap, the hard problem, the mind-body problem, all of those difficulties. And they are, I would say, insoluble because they're asking the wrong question. They're asking this question, how does subjective experience arise from a physical objective brain? Well, it doesn't. That's the wrong way of thinking about it, in my opinion.
We won't get into the philosophical problems faced by all scientists alike in terms of obviously the phenomena you're trying to explain depends on how you're defining it. So obviously that definition would leave out other inputs, so to speak. But with this kind of area in the, well, when we define consciousness or the way you've defined it, apart from that aside, in neuroscience, so for example, like you were saying, a lot of this is how do these firings here in the neurons produce this conscious state. We can't actually say produce this conscious state for many reasons. How do you feel about the assertion, without getting into the philosophical underpinnings of what constitutes causation, the charge that's often levied to neuroscientists, the wide practice of it, that all they produce is correlations?
Well, it's very important in any science to know when you're just finding correlations and when you are really able to look at causes. But I think that question is only really relevant if you take the standard idea of consciousness as being something in itself, something different from the functions or the processes in the brain or whatever else is going on. And I don't. I think the whole thing about the whole hunt for the neural correlates of consciousness is misguided. Now, I must clarify this, because I think what's actually happening is when people are looking for that, is they're doing really well at finding the neural correlates of particular content, if you like to call it that. I don't like the idea that consciousness is not a container, but I don't know what other word to use. We now know a lot about what neurons have to be firing to make that particular green that I'm looking at, or what neurons need to be firing for the feel of me holding this microphone here. Scratching my head and the noise I can hear when I do it. We're learning more and more and more about what is happening in the brain when particular things are experienced, and that's fine. Where I'm arguing is that we're not going to ever be able to find that some of those things are in consciousness and some of them are not, because that is part of the big mistake that most scientists are making. I'm absolutely with Dan Dennett when he says that most of the scientists working on consciousness are Cartesian materialists. What he means by that is that they say they're materialists, but they still believe in part of the Cartesian, Descartes' vision, which is the idea that there is a kind of finishing line, and when things get over the finish, when any neural process gets over some threshold or some finishing line, it becomes conscious, or it gets to where I am in my little Cartesian theatre inside the mind somewhere, watching the things that go on there. All this is nonsense, he says, and yet that is the underlying picture that most scientists have in their head of what consciousness must be. Things come into consciousness and go out again, or on the fringes, if you like, and they become conscious and then cease to be conscious. All this is, in both Dan's view and mine, totally the wrong way of thinking about it.
Okay, no, that's all valid points. Still, there must be an aspect there of self-enclosed circularity in the argument. Therefore, for example, we don't need to discuss whether these issues are about correlations, because if we discuss about correlations, we're assuming that the mind is this kind of still materialist Cartesian dualist that's separate from the brain, as where your approach there and another ultra eliminative materialist approach from Dennett would